Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to a special edition of Courtside Fracas. I am joined here by the lovely Janine. How you doing, Janine?
I'm good. I'm well. How are you? Actually, do you know what? I'm better than well because obviously today is the beginning of playoffs. So the Clippers have got their first game today. So yeah, it's a good day.
So you're feeling good. You're feeling bullish, yeah?
Yeah. Feeling ready. Seeing what we can bring to the court today. So yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. The thought with this was the fact that you're probably one of maybe 10 Clippers fans in the whole of the UK. And for a lot of people who listen to our pods, they don't support any team. So this is kind of our opportunity to use your unique knowledge as a
Yeah.
chance for us to teach some people a bit about the Clippers, your very interesting history, and why they may want to join you on that Clippers bandwagon, start a little fan club up on our Discord community. So
It's a great bandwagon. So yeah.
I guess the first place I would start is to ask you, A, how you got into basketball, and B, how you ended up a Clippers fan.
So I got into basketball around kind of 9-10 years ago. Like I was just kind of watching it here and there. My household, like I've got two brothers and my dad, we weren't traditional football watching people, so basketball was always shown in my house, so I kind of just watched it here and there. And then I grew up more on obviously Kobe's era because I'm a 96 baby, so that was the time he was obviously playing in the league. And then I kind of got into the Clippers I first started watching Chris Paul when he was at the Hornets. Really liked him, and I think he's
I can't be mad at that one, to be fair. You're
yeah,
already showing me out the gate that you've got great taste. I think now I've already got an idea for another pod we're gonna do, a Chris Paul appreciation pod.
He needs it. He definitely needs it. You know what? He is the best point guard in the league till this day. So yeah, from that, even just from watching him before I started supporting the Clippers, he's definitely someone that got me into watching basketball, like kind of like for real. And then when he got traded to the Clippers, that's when I got sold into watching it and really got sold into the team then. Although we've had our kind of franchise ups and downs, you're not always going to support.
A lot of ups and downs. We're going to get into it. Don't you worry.
Yeah. You never kind of start off always thinking you're going to be supporting an amazing team. But yeah, we've definitely had a lot of ups and downs. But it's been great watching them ever since. And I've just kind of locked in from then on.
Cool. So obviously he left, but you stayed. What made you stay and not go with Chris Paul? Because a lot of NBA fans and the way the league is kind of marketed, it's very superstar driven. So people will go with a player like, for example, Harold just follows LeBron James wherever he goes. So if LeBron James decides to go to the Memphis Grizzlies, he decides to go to the Memphis Grizzlies because they end up drafting Bronny in a few years. You'll see Harold, instead of having the AD and LeBron background, he'll have Bronny and LeBron in Memphis jersey.
Shameless
so what made you stay with the Clippers?
Do you know what? I think that's more kind of like in sport territory, especially growing up in England as well. Like if you're a football fan, I don't know people that just kind of switch teams just because their fave left. It's always just kind of like you stick by that team, no matter whether they're going through the ups and downs. So it's more kind of that. It's not really because obviously I'm going to be like, oh, where's Chris Paul going this time? It's nothing like that.
I respect that. So you've kind of taken the best of our side, and obviously you've applied it to the basketball over there. We'll get into the history of the Clippers a bit later, but there are, what I've written down here, kind of like key moments that basically transformed the Clippers from being perennial underachievers to one of the best teams in the NBA that we have now. So, you mentioned it, and I think it's a good place as any to start, signing Chris Paul. So that was in 2011. At the time, he was at the Hornets. I'm not sure if you remember, but I'm pretty sure it's very hard to forget. What originally happened is that he was traded to the Lakers. But at that time, the Lakers were owned by the league. And essentially what ended up happening was that David Stern, the commissioner, who ended up essentially being the de facto owner of the Hornets, vetoed the trade. Playing a bit of what if here. If he'd gone to the Lakers, you'd be a Lakers fan now, yeah?
Ooh. Do you know what? Yeah, I actually think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
because in terms of even kind of now, I always kind of just look at it like, oh, even the rivalry that we have with the Lakers. I'm always just thinking like, what if I did support the Lakers? Like,
yeah,
they are a good franchise. But yeah, I think so. If he had gone to the Lakers, I would have stayed with the Lakers and support them.
yeah.
So
Because when you think about it, he would have joined the aging Kobe, but it was kind of written in the cards that Dwight Howard, who was going to be a free agent that
yeah,
2011 summer, was going to come to the Lakers as well. So that would have been a big three: Chris Paul, Kobe, and Dwight Howard. And
right.
thinking back then, a Dwight Howard, Chris Paul pick and roll would have been a thing
I would
to
have
a thing to
smashed that.
yeah, and a two-man game between Kobe and Chris Paul would have been beautiful to watch. I think we were robbed somewhat with that.
Obviously,
Um,
yeah,
exactly, exactly. Um, the second key moment, which actually happened before signing Chris Paul, was drafting Blake Griffin. Obviously, you weren't a Clippers fan at this point, but
yeah.
you got to watch him with Chris Paul. You got to watch Lob City. Tell us a bit about your experience of Blake Griffin as a Clipper and how you felt about him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I think he started off as a great all-round player. I don't think he so much struggled with shooting, but it was an unbelievable dunker. I think he must have done one of the dunk contests at All-Star. I think he might have won one. I'm not too
He
sure.
did, he did. It was the
Yeah,
one where he jumped over the Kia.
yeah,
Because
that's it.
he does the
Yeah, yeah,
adverts with Kia, yeah.
yeah,
He
exactly.
he
Yeah.
jumped over the hood of the car, yeah.
Exactly. So he's always kind of had that kind of athleticism about him on the court. And yeah, he was just unbelievable. And I think drafting him as a rookie, like the league is actually, I think, is quite well in kind of developing rookie players. And he was one of those kind of like people they already seen as a star already from kind of drafting him. So yeah, I think when signing to the Clippers, although I feel like he would have probably settled in maybe more at the Lakers. I don't know why. I've always kind of thought like, oh, maybe he would have fitted in with maybe like
He was
Kobe
a
at those
star.
time.
He does like
Yeah,
his comedy, his adverts were always
yeah,
different, they were quirky, so he definitely had that star power. I think what was great though is that he brought that star power to the Clippers. I think
yeah.
honestly signing him was the start of everything
Of
changing for the Clippers.
something new, yeah, because yeah, obviously we've had that long history of just suffering in playoffs, and even the regular season we went doing so tremendously for a number of years, and then yeah, bringing in someone that's fresh, and he was young as well, and was just completely just U-turned the whole franchise, made them into something now. Like you're looking at them, you're like, wow, okay, cool. Like
Proper,
this is a team
exactly.
where you gotta be now watching, keeping an eye on, because yeah, they're doing something.
Exactly. And I mean, you look at it, and he originally got injured, missed his whole first season. And
Yeah,
I'm sure Clippers fans then would have been like, ooh, another one, because they have a very, very bad history in terms of injury.
yeah,
But then he came back and he won Rookie of the Year. Um, for that season, I think his rookie season, he was 22 points, 12 and a half rebounds, and 3.8 assists. So you can see that
so
once he
it's
did, yeah, once he
it's great.
started, he
Yeah.
burst into the league. You're talking about a player who made 4 All NBA teams, 6 All Star teams, and he
Teams.
finished third in the 2014 MVP race, all in his 8 years at the Clippers. How did you feel when he left? Because I remember it was a cascade of a few events, obviously, and we'll get to this later on in this episode. He and Chris Paul never did quite see eye to eye.
Yeah.
So it was 2017, and it was time for contracts to be signed. And essentially, the whispers around the league were like, Blake is not going to sign if Chris Paul is still here. And you guys ended up trading Chris Paul to the Houston Rockets. I'm sure that would have broken your heart somewhat. Yeah,
Devastating.
I think your eyes were a bit wet there. So
Devastating.
Chris Paul went to the Houston Rockets. Blake signed a 5-year contract, and part of that 5-year contract, the pitch that they had with him, they took him through Staples Center and spoke about how he was part of the fabric and the DNA of this basketball club, and they wanted him to stay with the Clippers for life, only for them to get rid of him a little while later. How did you feel when Blake left?
um, do you know what? I wasn't as disheartened as I thought I would be, because I was more disheartened for when Chris Paul left. But with Blake, I felt like it was maybe time. Like that was the end of his run with the Clippers. He came in, did absolutely tremendously, and you couldn't fault him for anything that he did with the Clippers, because although obviously we didn't really win any championships, and obviously we were seeding quite well for playoffs and everything, but there's only so much that you can do. It's like a similar thing to like, how can I describe it? Kind of like, I'm not saying he's an identical player or on the same status as like Ronaldo or something, but when Ronaldo was at United, and then when it was time for him to leave the Premier League, he left. You know? Yeah. It's almost kind of like that. But at the same time, he left the Clippers in very good kind of position for, even if they were going to be signing other players, like they needed players of his caliber at his level. So they knew that they couldn't get rid of him and just bring in kind of like anyone, because he's now built kind of, he's building that legacy for the Clippers again. And then, so I think, I wasn't really disheartened when he left. It's more, I cried for Chris Paul.
A ruthless woman, a businesswoman from the looks and the sounds of things. And I guess the next key moment was probably 2013, the arrival of Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers came to you guys from the Celtics. He was then and still is now considered probably a top 5 coach in the NBA. He has pedigree. He's won a championship over at Boston, lost a couple of finals as well. How did you feel when Doc Rivers came in? I don't know how much you're into X and O's, but obviously you had Chris. Obviously, you didn't have Chris at that point. Obviously, you had Blake, and you were a team that were going in the right direction. Was the arrival of Doc for you like a statement, or was it kind of like, it is what it is?
No, it was definitely a statement, because as far as our history goes, we've also had a number of coaches for that team, and clearly there was certain things that are not working with certain coaches, and the way Doc Rivers came in and just kind of started building that franchise again. I mean, it's all down to the players, but it's more down to the coach as well, and he's been doing such a great job since. I just think he's suited to the Clippers. He's coached obviously big franchises like the Celtics as well, so coming in with that kind of coaching versatility that he has, he knows exactly what he needs to be doing with the players. So I think it was a good moment for them to bring in someone like Doc. So they're doing quite well with him right now.
Exactly. Let's talk about the final key moment. This one I'm sure you won't even need to guess. A certain Mr. Donald Sterling. So let me. In fact, let's go back and give people a bit of a picture of the history of the Clippers. I mean, Sterling. It happened in 2014. The incident I'm going to mention. Sterling had already long had a reputation as probably the worst owner of a professional franchise in American professional sports, the big 4 major leagues. But I want to kind of go back and let's talk a bit about the history of the Clippers and how actually questionable ownership is not rare and it's not unheard for you guys. So obviously you were a franchise. Well, I say obviously, I had to do my own research, so I guess it's not that obvious. Your franchise was founded in 1970, the Buffalo Braves. That's Buffalo, New York. You were one of 3 expansion teams alongside the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Portland Trail Blazers. I think you'll also notice that those 2 teams have actually managed to win championships, so that's great. But we'll keep it moving.
Shit.
We'll keep it moving. I just wanted to mention it in passing.
Championship coming right up.
Cleveland Cavaliers and the Portland Trail Blazers, and essentially you were kind of a franchise that didn't do very well until you signed Bob McAdoo. I don't know, he's an old school player. Does that name ring a bell to you at all?
So he won 1 MVP back in, I think, 1974.
Ooh, hello. Okay, you've been doing your research. Okay, I respect it. So Bob McAdoo was kind of the first star that played for the Buffalo Braves. The issue for you guys, I guess, and why you couldn't really push on is you shared the gym that you played with, and I'm going to have to read this right off the screen, the Canisius Golden Griffin College men's basketball team. So essentially, that was and is still a college based in Buffalo, and essentially in terms of where you played, they had the lease first, which meant that they basically gave themselves the pick of the best dates for games because they were kind of worried about you guys becoming the main attraction in Buffalo. So what your owner decided to do was sell all your stars. So McAdoo got traded. He got traded to the Pistons. He got traded to the Knicks, but then he also played for the Lakers and Pistons. And at the Lakers and Pistons, he actually won a couple of titles. So he got traded. Once your owner got rid of all your assets, they're basically released from their lease. And then what he did is, which is quite unfounded, he and the owner of the Celtics at the time switched franchises. So he took the Boston Celtics, and the Celtics owner, Irv Levin, took the Buffalo Braves. The reason being, he was from South California, and he always had eyes on moving his franchise there. But obviously, you're talking about the Boston Celtics.
The Celtics, you can't, in the 1970s, that franchise was it's quite solid already for that franchise. So
in the 1970s, I think they'd won like 10, 11 championships already. And my head's a bit rattled. Well, not rattled. My head's a bit blurry in terms of that time. But yeah, they won like 5 or 6. Probably Yas would know exactly how many they won by that time. So essentially, they switched franchises, and so now
shady business that though.
It is, isn't it? Levin now took the Buffalo Braves, and he moved to San Diego. They became the San Diego Clippers. Once they were in San Diego, again, kind of like a middling franchise, doing okay. They had a lot of injuries. That was 1978. So they basically were there replacing a team that you also know about. So they were replacing the San Diego Rockets who moved to Houston. And now you may know them in the name of the Houston Rockets. Exactly. And then 1981, 11 years after the Braves / the Clippers were founded, your main man, Donald Sterling, steps in. LA real estate mogul. I think between him and his wife, at one point, they owned the most commercial property in LA. I mean, his checkered history in terms of being a landlord who didn't like ethnic minorities being his tenants is well documented. Not to mention things the players have mentioned in terms of like the all-white parties he used to have, and he used to parade the players around almost like they were animals in a zoo. So he came in and he essentially saw that his friend Al Davis, who owned the Oakland Raiders, was able to move Oakland from Oakland all the way to Los Angeles, and he was able to do that without the NFL agreeing to do it. And he thought, you know what? I'm gonna have me a bit of that as well. I don't want to be in San Diego. I want to go home to LA. So I'm gonna move this franchise. And he was able to get away with it. Essentially, the NBA tried to have a lawsuit and a $25 million fine. So what he did was he sued them back. And by the end, they both like, okay, well, we're gonna cool it, yeah. So they both cool. Exactly. And that $25 million fine went down to $6 million. So now, cool, we're in LA. I mean, it didn't really help very much because you didn't actually have your first winning season under him until I think 92. So you're talking about a guy who brought the franchise in 81 and he didn't have a winning season until 92. And that was your first winning season in 93. The 90s are, again, pretty much been in the Lakers' shadow. You contemplated at some point moving to Anaheim, which is basically a suburb in Southwest California. Obviously, I hope you all appreciate the actual read. I had to go and read about the Clippers.
Jeez.
I had to go and
reading.
So you went down to Anaheim and you were playing games there. And what actually was happening was that you were much more popular in Anaheim. So in Anaheim, when you played there, I think 5 to 10 times a season, you get about 16,000 people watching. But then when you play in LA, you'd only get 9,000 people watching because obviously the Lakers are the main attraction. So he contemplated, that's Donald Sterling, contemplated at some point of moving to Anaheim, but I don't think they could quite get the TV deal right. The only other thing I could probably mention from the 90s is that you did get the number 1 pick in 98 and you drafted Michael Oluwakandi, Nigerian, obviously.
No. You've done more research.
Michael Oluwakandi. And that ended up not working very well. He was out of the Clippers after 4 years, and after 8 years, he was out of the league completely. So that's just me kind of giving a background to the Clippers, Donald Sterling, the kind of ownership you had, and how basically even up to 2014, you hadn't had any success whatsoever. I think he made in his 91, 2001, in his 30 odd years of ownership, I think he made the playoffs like 6 times.
Something like that. 6
Yeah,
times.
6 maybe. Yeah.
Most of that would have been more towards the post 2010.
Exactly.
So even that,
so
it's
really,
like it was like a long period.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He was stat stuffing, basically. Cool. So to come back to 2014 and the incident we're talking about, that was so key to where the Clippers are today. A video recording was played and shared with TMZ, basically, of Donald Sterling speaking to his mistress and explaining that he didn't like her socializing with black people, and furthermore posting it on public. She posted it on Instagram. Guess who it turned out that the person in question was?
Oh, Magic Johnson.
A certain Magic, Mr. LA, Mr. LA himself.
Mr. LA, Mr. Basketball, Mr. Black League, like anything that's just basketball is Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson, exactly. So it turned out it was Magic Johnson, and the backlash was ridiculous. You had people like Jesse Jackson talking about it. You had people like Barack Obama commenting about it. That incident was surprising, but not surprising. More so, like I said, people already knew he kind of had a long history of racist behavior and mannerisms.
Yeah, he was such a bigot. Like, I think a lot of people just let him slide with a lot of things because he's a big time mogul, big billionaire businessman. Like, he's basically one of those people you're going to look at like, oh, wow, if I'm going to chat shit, like, nothing's going to happen to him. Like,
exactly. Yeah. You're untouchable. You become that rich and you're almost above the law and above the morals that the rest of us have to live by. What I wanted to ask you about this period was, there was, like I mentioned, there's a lot of pressure on the players. What do you remember your experience as a Clippers fan at this time in terms of the Donald Sterling stuff coming out?
Do you know, it was really tough because at that point we were into the playoff series already of that year. So, and at that point, like, the team's roster itself is predominantly black players. So now you're thinking like, okay, this is definitely going to affect the players. Above everything else, it's not even it's the whole franchise. Like, Donald Sterling is just him on his own, and then you have to think about this. There's the team staff, there's the coaches, and the players are all going to be affected. And predominantly, a lot of them are black, and it's like, this is gonna flip. Even in terms of, not even just to keep it towards the Clippers side. This is the whole league. It's like the whole league has got black players.
Everybody gave an opinion. Charles Barkley was talking LeBron, Kobe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. From your perspective as a black woman, what did you expect or not expect the players to do in that scenario? Were you expecting them to make a statement? Did you think it wasn't fair to expect them to make a statement? What were your feelings?
I think it wasn't really fair for them to make a statement. Like I said, that entire incident was just Donald Sterling himself. It wasn't to do with anything to do with the Clippers franchise or anything. It wasn't even anything basketball related. It's just the guy just hated black people. Let's just say that. And for the players to kind of then speak out, and like, it's really nice to see, because the incident didn't happen that long ago, and that's now 6 years now. But you're thinking with kind of what's going on now in our day and age, you're thinking, oh, this stuff was even happening still 6 years ago, and like, people were still speaking out and being more vocal about it. And I didn't expect the players to kind of do what I thought they should have been doing, or like even just to mention anything, say anything, like in terms of even the likes of people like LeBron, like then he wasn't even part of the Clippers franchise. So yeah, for all kind of players to be speaking out, it was a really great thing. But
like, what did they do ahead of Game 4? They had with the jerseys.
Yeah, so they had in their fourth game against.
It was Golden State, yeah.
Golden State. I think, the players all wore their jerseys inside out, and then I'd throw them on the court at the end of the game because, they didn't want to show the Clippers kind of badge or anything, logo. Yeah, so, because obviously at that point, and it was so unfair to see that the Clippers were going through this because it had completely nothing to do with them. They just had a really shitty owner. And I think now that's really... like, when you see the difference between him and Bowman, obviously, who we'll get to, like, you can really tell the difference of ownership. Like, he completely just did not care about his franchise. It was just something that he had because it was marketable at that point.
It was
having.
cool to own an
Yeah, it was
NBA
cool. You're
franchise.
owning
You're
a league.
popular.
Yeah, you're owning something in one of their 4 biggest leagues. Yeah, it's really cool for him. And it wasn't probably even that cool for him. It was just like another thing just to add on to his book of all the things I can get, all the things I can have as a billionaire. So yeah,
Exactly. It was an asset, and I remember listening to a 30 for 30 podcast series, and they're talking about, obviously it was centered around Sterling and what happened, but they went back in detail, and they talked about how at the time in the 80s, obviously the Lakers were the flashy team,
yeah,
Showtime, hosting parties, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He looking over like, I want a bit of that. I want to be popular
yeah,
like I want to be popular like Dr. Bus, you know. And it just reflected like the mistress in question. She is so not funny, but it's so interesting that the genesis of everything happening was the fact that like he always had mistresses, but this
yeah,
mistress was kind of, she'd come to the Clippers or offices making comments. I'm gonna own this team one day, etc., insulting his wife, who he's been with for like 50 years or so. Like that.
yeah,
Yeah, insulting his wife, and I think because him and her used to argue a lot, this mistress we're talking about, she decided so she could be like to him, you always forget things you say. Going forward, what I'm going to do is record all our conversations. So if I say you said something and you say you didn't, I can just be like, here's the recording.
yeah.
Exactly. And basically, through one of her disputes with his wife, um, the wife decided basically to sue her and try and take back. Remember, I said lawsuits. The Sterlings love a lawsuit. But basically
Love a
wanted
lawsuit.
basically wanted to take back every gift her husband had given. Basically, the money used is mine and his money, so
Yeah,
I want my stuff back. And that's when the girl decided, like, no, this is not going to happen. I'm going to play this tape. And basically, what that the cascading events of that meant that I think that happened on the 24th. Let me just check my notes. That happened on the 25th of April is when
25th
that
of
came
April.
out.
Yeah,
The game was on the 27th. I remember Golden State players saying that they were ready. Andre Iguodala was like, listen, if they wanted to boycott that game, I was down to boycott that game. Funnily enough, Sterling wanted to come to that game, you know, and Doc Rivers had to basically get on the phone
fun.
and be like, you cannot come to this game. Like, what you've put these players through already
Cheeky guy.
is a that just shows how warped and how like
Yeah,
you said, as a
he's so
billionaire, he doesn't even
far. Yeah,
see the things he does, you know, and how it influences everybody else. Doc Rivers said he couldn't come. Doc Rivers led the team so well during that period. It was kind of like, guys, we need to, whatever we're saying, we need to say it as one voice and not you talking to this outlet, you
yeah,
talking to that outlet. I'll be the voice. What do you guys want me to say out there? I was basically that we just want to focus on our basketball. You know, this is the playoffs. At that time, they had a good team. It was the first season of Lob City. And obviously, they hadn't had a team like this in the Clippers history. So it's like for him to do this at that time,
yeah. At
it
that
was
time,
it was it was crazy. And then essentially 5 days later, he got a lifetime ban. And I'm gonna
from the big bad boss. Yes.
exactly. He got a lifetime ban from Adam Silver, along with a $2.5 million fine. That's basically the highest fine that is allowed. He was barred from attending games or practices involving any NBA team, being present in any Clippers office or facility, and from participating in any team business, personnel decisions, or league activity. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver stated in a press conference regarding the decision that he will try to force Sterling to sell the Clippers, which will require the consent of 3/4 of the league's 29 other team owners.
Yeah.
And a
I
little
think all
tidbit,
29 owners said get him out, so
they
which was
couldn't afford
unanimous.
not to. Like, the
No,
league is
yeah,
what, 70-80% black currently. And talking about all the
yeah,
legends, the vast majority of them, again, are
yeah,
black men. So for you to be an owner, to employ these men, and to not stand on their side in terms of something so blatantly racist, there was only one way that could ever go.
yeah,
So that same year, by August 2014, Steve Ballmer, billionaire of Microsoft, bought the Clippers for $2 billion from Shelley Sterling. So as part of the deal, Shelley received the titles of owner emeritus and Clippers
yeah,
#1 fan, as well as 10 tickets in sections 101 or 111 for all Clippers games, 2
yeah,
courtside tickets for all games in Los Angeles, 6 parking spots in Lot C for each game, 12 VIP passes that include access to the Lexus Club, Arena Club, or Chairman's Lounge and Media Room or equivalent, for each Staples game, 3 championship rings if the Clippers ever win a title, and will run a charitable foundation. The deal also included a stipulation that Steve Ballmer would keep the team in LA. I think the reason that was mentioned is that a few years ago he'd been part of an ownership group who tried to buy a franchise and potentially move them to Seattle. He's from Seattle. So I think the idea was that you buy this team and you keep this team in LA, and obviously her being in LA, that is a very sweet deal they got. Considering,
do you know what? I think like a lot of people had a lot to say about his wife, Donald Sterling's wife, having that kind of deal. But aside from that, it's like she was married to up to like he was such a bad man. Like she had to deal with all this stuff. Like we say, he had mistresses. He was just completely just a shitty husband. So like aside from that, she had put in a lot of money into the franchise, into the Clippers. So for her to kind of get kind of those perks, shall we say, is not. I think it's fair, and because it wasn't her, it was just her stupid bigot husband at the time. So it wasn't, and he hasn't got anything. He got banned.
Yeah, exactly.
He got banned. He got told to get lost. So, like, although obviously the people will say it's under the Sterling name, it's under the Sterling franchise and stuff like that, she's still sharing that with Donald. But it's only fair. Like they had obviously built a franchise. She had put in a lot of money and invested a lot of time into it. Aside from that, she had invested more time into the Clippers, and she had no idea about sporting leagues, nothing to do with basketball. She was a business mogul herself, and she had nothing, like she didn't know anything about sport. And obviously she entrusted her husband to kind of take the reins and make sure like this franchise that they're building, the money they're putting in, the investment they're putting into a league, that they're going to be good. And he did absolutely nothing. So for her to kind of get those perks, I think it was justifiable, to be fair.
Agreed. Cool. So that's the Sterling's leaving and Steve Ballmer coming in. Before getting your opinions on Steve Ballmer, I just want to rewind just a little bit. Let's talk Lob City. So tell me about your feelings about Lob City. We're talking CP3, Blake, DeAndre Jordan. What was that like watching that when it was happening?
Formidable 3. Oh, man, that was such a great like era, man. I kind of wish that we re-signed Chris Paul in the next maybe 2 years or something like that. I don't know. But I don't know if he's gonna hear this one day. Like, coming back to the franchise. I don't know. But yeah, no, Lob City, I think that was something that was needed for the franchise, the Clippers. Like we needed great players. We needed people that were very versatile, very athletic. And I think them 3, well, especially Blake and Paul, just kind of, they blended well on the court. Although like their reputation outside was not so great, but on the court, they did what they had to do. And they got us into playoffs a lot of times. So aside from the injuries that were consistently happening to Blake, which was obviously such a downer on our team, I think, yeah, just by having those 3, like the 3, even DeAndre Jordan, like he was a great shooter, man. He should come by us up.
Yeah, and obviously, when you say great shooters, obviously the fact that he's a big man and obviously everything's going in, and it's he must have been close to 60% from the field, because all he was doing was layups, putbacks, and basically jumping up for
alley hoops. Yeah.
Do you remember the one when he killed that guy? I forget his name. Oh man, he's out of the league now. He played for the Phoenix Suns. He was a point guard. I think he moved to the Celtics, and he dunked it over him. And the guy, how have I forgotten the guy's name? Oh my days!
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, as we both kind of try and remember one of DeAndre Jordan's highlight dunks, we'll talk about those playoff woes that you mentioned. Obviously, 2014 playoffs didn't end well. You had a Golden State team that were on the come up, and with everything that was going on, it could have only really went one way. But let's talk about 2015. So 2015 is the year of the infamous Rocket series. So that's you guys being 3-1 up. In Game 6 at home, you were up by double digits, like halfway through the 4th. They sit James Harden, and they come back, and then they go to Game 7, and then they beat you. How did that feel? Talk to me.
We were close, man. We were so close. And do you know what? That's kind of like the worrying thing that I'm thinking of, like, in the current playoffs now. Like, I hope it's not kind of like deja vu again, because do you know? Nah. Well, I was gonna say that we need to just keep strong. But in terms of kind of looking back at the 2015,
that was a choke.
Yeah,
I don't care what you say.
Yeah, nah. Okay, yeah, we choked. Yeah, we choked. I never ever want to badmouth my team. I'm not like Harold. Harold will badmouth his formidable Lakers.
Yeah, from here to Timbuktu.
Listen, yeah.
That hurt me so much because Chris Paul had a reputation of being he doesn't show up in the playoffs, he's just a regular season player, similar to the reputation that James Harden has now. And it was like, oh my days, they're gonna get, because he hadn't even been to a finals at that point.
Yeah.
And he, like a conference finals, that is. And it was like, oh, okay, they finally done it. They're up. They're gonna see this out. They're much better than the Rockets. You guys had Josh Smith, Mr. Clanger, draining free. I was watching the highlights earlier, and there's a sequence where the ball's going off. Jamal Crawford runs to keep it on, only for I don't know if it was Trevor Ariza or somebody else to hit. He throws it right to him, hit him free. It was ridiculous, and it was 19 points ahead with like a minute left in the third. They brought it down to like 10, but then you guys extended it back again to like 12. I just don't understand how you contrived to lose that series. We'll talk about the other series, and those ones make a bit more sense because of injuries, but this series, man.
Do you know what I think it was about that time? There was no clutch players at all. As much as I big up Chris Paul, and everyone obviously say, yeah, he doesn't really show up for the final games and stuff. Yeah, we didn't really solidify any clutch players. Nobody really had that pressure on them in like those final moments. So I think that's why we did really end up choking. So, but now it's a whole different situation. I think our game is going to be absolutely going.
You keep talking about now, but I'm trying to talk about back then. You get me? The thing about the old days, the old days. Let's talk about the old days. Cool. So, in 2016 was the first round loss to the Portland Trail Blazers. You went 2-0 up. They brought it back to 2-2. You ended up losing 4-2. This one, I am less match. I can't even say less. This one, I can't blame you guys at all. Both CP3 and Blake went down for those last two games. How did that series feel? Obviously, you had a painful exit the year before. Were you feeling bullish this postseason? Because I think you were third seeds both years actually. So another year of being a third seed, going into that first round series against the Trailblazers. How were you feeling?
No, I think at that point from the previous season, they were rebuilding. So obviously, like the main focus was having that, I think, like 2-game player series between Blake and Chris Paul, and it was just such a shame because it wasn't. I think even the coaches, but obviously the fans as well, knew that. At that time, they never really kind of took load managing that serious, especially when you are very like top players. And the fact is, their bench was literally a 2-man team, let's say, and like it wasn't. Yeah, they didn't load manage their players that well. And for them to play the regular seasons literally every day, we knew. I think people knew kind of like either minor injuries are gonna come or there's gonna be severe injuries. That you're not resting these players. You're working them every single game. And I think at that point in that season that we just knew that, at least if we're gonna kind of go out, we're going against a very, very strong team. So even the Trailblazers, they've obviously won their chips as well. So it wasn't so much of a disappointment. Obviously, we do want to win championships, but at that point, I think it wasn't so disheartening as the previous year where we were so close.
Fair enough. And then 2017, again, a first round loss to the Utah Jazz. This one was a bit more painful, 7 games. You actually both kept going to each other's homes and taking games away from each other. And that final game this particular year, Blake got injured. How did you feel? Obviously, that was Chris Paul's last playoff series with you guys. How did you feel?
I think, like I said before, I think with the whole Blake kind of thing, it's at that point we had overworked a player for many years. At that point, it was time for him to have a new beginning. Not saying that obviously he flopped on purpose or something, but it was more or less that it was going to happen, and if an injury was going to come, then it probably let's just say maybe it came at the right time for him. Maybe that was his kind of exit, his God's way of telling him that's his exit from the Clippers, from that franchise. Not disheartening as well, but more so obviously Chris Paul. Yeah, I didn't really want to see him go. To be fair, I want him back. I want him back. I want him back.
The final two things I want to ask you about are more current, so we can get back off the old days and we can come back to the present day. Talk to me about Steve Ballmer's stewardship of the Clippers franchise. So what he's brought in, and aside from just necessarily having a great roster now, as you know, players get old. You have to rebuild through the draft, etc., etc. Tell me what it is about Steve Ballmer's stewardship of the Clippers that makes you feel so positive about your future.
I think, comparing him to Donald Sterling, you see an owner that's completely invested in his franchise, in something that he owns. He turns up to most of their home games and he's cheering in the crowds. He's such a big kid. Like he really, really, really just cherishes what he's kind of invested his money into. And in terms of kind of the players, you can see how well he gets along with the players. His roster is pretty much a black team. I think there's only about 4 players now that are white on the bench. I think it might be even less now. So for him, that he completely understands, and we don't even have to talk about anything kind of in terms of racism for him. So I think he's such a great owner. He's building a very good franchise, kind of building from that moment in 2014 from what happened with Donald Sterling. I think he's just kind of he's kind of pushing the Clippers in a whole different direction. We're not so much seen as like people that this team just chokes in the playoffs. You know what? They're just owned by a rubbish owner. He doesn't really care about their team. But yeah, Ballmer's coming in and he's doing great things. I think he's going to take the franchise into, I hope, being a very, very big franchise. Obviously, you have to compete with the likes of the Lakers, who are your rival team in LA. Then you've got bigger clubs like the Knicks, Celtics, even Cavs, Chicago Bulls. He's trying to solidify kind of their place in the league, that they're not a rubbish team. They're not someone that you have to just be overlooking because they haven't won any championships. So yeah, I think he's doing a great job. I think he's in the right frame of carrying this team into a kind of a good position.
Yeah, I mean, we know that once you're established as a good franchise, that these are the franchises players will flock to as free agent. Obviously, you have the advantage of being a major market, but historically, the way players have looked at the Clippers, that's kind of meant that they wouldn't go there. They'd probably rather go to a team in a smaller market, but a better managed. And now it seems like you've got Doc Rivers at the helm, one of the best and most respected coaches in the league.
Yeah.
You've got one of the richest owners who's already showed he's not scared to dip his hand in his pockets. I hear rumors about you guys building your own arena.
Our own arena, yeah. So there was a bit of a complication because he obviously, with the rival with the Lakers do actually take precedent over the Staples Center, having them been there first. So obviously they're trying to, like I said, with him trying to push the franchise into a new direction. We want to come away from this rivalry with the Lakers, and you can have two great teams in the same area. So yeah, I think they have gone through with it now. So the arena will be actually built 2024, I think, from my research. They'll be playing. They will be playing near their practice facility in Inglewood. So it'll be quite close. I think there was a big kind of situation with the previous owners of the Forum is MSG's Madison Square Garden. They didn't want to kind of let them kind of take away that event space, because Madison Square Garden is seen as like kind of the biggest event arena in America, as well as this. Yeah. So, they didn't want there to be like, oh, now there's another competing on the west side, because there's already Staples there. So, but I think they reached a conclusion, and then, we're going to completely have our own separate entity away from the Lakers, away from Staples, which will be, I think that would be great in pushing the franchise into a new direction.
Yeah, I think during the Lob City days, if my memory serves me right, obviously when you come into the facility, all you're seeing is Lakers banners, Lakers banners, Lakers banners,
Yeah,
and I think Doc Rivers got them to cover the banners up. Obviously, he was coming from the Celtics already, so that's a big rivalry. Played the Lakers in 3 finals, but then he's come to the Clippers, so he's doubled down as a
yeah,
rival as the Lakers. That see that stuff up there? Yeah, I ain't trying to see that. Me and my guys
yeah.
ain't trying to see that.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah, and it's big work. Like you must think, like in regular season time, Lakers will have a game today, Clippers will have a game tomorrow. Like that is a big like. And when you watch the games, you will see the Lakers and all their sponsorships and all their banners and stuff like that. When you see the Clippers, you're also going to see the exact same. So it's just like big
Whoa,
work.
whoa, 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 not so many banners. Just let's be
Not
honest.
so many, not so many. Obviously, if anyone has actually ever been, I've been outside Staples, so I've seen like it is Lakers focused. Like even outside, they've got statues of the greats. Shaq is out there, Magic Johnson is out there. I think they're putting one for Kobe as well soon. So yeah, it is completely Lakers focused. And even like when you discuss with certain people who are kind of trying to get their head around basketball now, when they start reading up on things, especially in the space of LA, they're gonna just come across straight away. It's the Lakers, and then you're gonna be thinking, oh wait, there's another team as well that play at the same venue. Like, who are these Clippers? And you know what? We're trying to build. We're not even building at this point where we are in 2020. The league is very, very good. Like the franchise is good, so we need our own separate kind of entity.
Fully establishing
Yeah.
yourselves away from the Lakers. And I guess the final thing I want to ask you about is this current Clippers, and obviously we're recording this on Monday. Playoffs are about to start. Are you guys playing today?
We're playing today against the
Mavericks.
Sorry, I've lost my head. I was thinking
That's fine.
the Utah Jazz are on the TV right now. I was thinking,
Yeah.
lost my head. Yeah. We're looking good. We're looking really good. Our bench is very, very tight. We're bringing him back. I don't think Montrezl Harrell will be playing in today's game. Actually, I have heard as of today that he might have starting minutes, but he's not going to be one of the starting 5. So we will see how that goes. But in terms of obviously our roster, Kawhi and Paul George, excellent players. I think yesterday we were discussing about the chemistry that they didn't have, say, in the regular season. And I think that's something they've been really building on. And I think now that we've kind of watched them seeding games in the bubble, I think that kind of space they needed for them to work kind of together. You know, you need that first man and a second man. And then I think with the rest of the bench that we have, we do have third man players as well. We've got Lou Williams, Pat Beverly. I know people are going to start chatting shit, but yeah.
You got Marcus Morris, who hasn't had such the best introduction to the life in LA, but he is a capable player. You got Landry Shamet on there as well. Zubac, who you took from the Lakers. That's one of Magic's worst moves as a GM, man. Ridiculous.
Zubac, formidable, absolutely great. Such a good center, you know, pushes quite well in starting minutes. Very forceful within the paint. So yeah, that's great signing for him.
You are the deepest. I'd say you're the deepest club in the playoffs. My favorites, just because I think you have too much talent, and I think you have a coach who, yes, you guys have struggled to come together. That's been due to Paul George's injuries, but as you guys are, obviously everyone's in the bubble, and I really hope they do a documentary on the bubble and they're all recording everything, because these moments they're living now, we'll never see anything like it.
I doubt it.
We're talking about 100, 200 of the best basketball players on the planet are all in the same place, interacting
all
with each
hungry,
other.
just to play,
So that would be definitely fantastic for team chemistry. So I think that will build and develop as you get through the playoff series. I think you have too much for the Lakers, and I don't really see anybody in the East necessarily giving you a hard game. Maybe Raptors if they can get through.
I said this. Raptors are very, very strong contenders. They're quite scary as well. Their bench almost kind of mirrors our bench as well in terms of they've got quite a good roster. I mean, they don't have 1-2 players. They've got about 4 or 5. So yeah, there will probably be ones to watch as well in the East.
I think where you kind of go over them is that at the top end they don't have a Kawhi, and I think they don't.
Yeah.
Kawhi and Paul George are both better than Pascal Siakam.
Yes.
So you know, you have the best players in the series, the best two players in the series, and as you know, basketball is a strong link sport. You're as good as your best player. So for you guys to not make the finals and to not win it, as much as everything's gone on this season, I'd be surprised.
This one will be disheartening. I really don't want them to kind of, even if we don't get a championship, I think we need to kind of tie off the series games in quite good standing. But obviously, I want to say we're going to win. So it's just, having that bench with good chemistry on the court is exactly what we need. I think I was saying yesterday that in our scrimmage games at the beginning of the bubble, we looked at kind of a little bit lazy. And you know what? I think the problem with that is like you kind of start seeing how other teams are playing as well. Even the Lakers themselves will they still are looking very lazy. So I don't know for them, particularly myself. I don't even know for LeBron these days. But he just wants to drink wine and eat cheese. I think that's what he does. But
this would not be a Clippers pod without you trying to dig out the Lakers. I will be playing this snippet to Harold. And whatever he decides to do as a result of that, do not come crying to me. Janine, I want to thank you for your time. These playoffs are going to be amazing. I can't wait. I'm going to be there watching as much as I possibly can. Your Clippers especially. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, Janine is part of the Touchline Media Group, Courtside Fracas team. I'm going to be on the Discord watching the Raptors and Brooklyn Nets game tonight with Sai. If you're about, feel free to come through, Janine. But even if you're not about tonight, I'm sure we'll see you on the Discord throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Peace. No worries.
Peace.